Well, hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what where you are and when you are. It's as simple as that. I can't depend on everybody listening to this live. I can't depend on everybody being in the same time zone. And I can't depend on a lot of things that I don't have control of. And I don't worry about that stuff. I worry about things I have control of. Hey, happy Tuesday. Mm, wow. This is a good coffee today. Today is definitely a good day. Have a good day. I love this, one of my favorite cups, because it's true. Because it's true, because you can make it true. You're gonna say, "Well, I don't know if it's gonna be a good day or not." What do you mean you don't know if it's gonna be a good day or not? Don't you want it to be a good day? And then make it a good day. No matter what happens, there are gonna be things that can happen that aren't gonna feel good, but you don't have to make yourself feel bad because of it. And once you start to make yourself feel good, it feels good, doesn't it? Now, for the longest time, I think I was taught by my uncle, who was in sales, and he was in motivation and self help, and he's one of the ones that kind of mentored me to be where I am today, or at least got me in that in the ballpark. And so he would, when anyone asked him how he's doing, it would be like, "Oh, big smile on his face, fantastic! I'm doing so good. It can't be better than this." And I started doing that, and you know what it does for you is it makes you, when you say it as sincere as possible, even though you're not feeling good, but you say it with emotion and you say the great words, all of a sudden you start feeling good. All of a sudden you start matching almost what you're saying. It's amazing how that works. Hey, today is July 14th. We're in the middle of July. Woo, woo, woo. Middle of July on our slide down on 2026. I'd almost tell you, if I could, if I knew them by heart, I would tell you how many days before Christmas. That's what people like start doing now. There's only 185 days to Christmas, whatever it is. I don't know if that's true. Um, it is a look forward type of statement, right? But people say it because they want people to know, hey, the year's flying by, and Christmas is coming, and Christmas is a big holiday for a lot of us. And so, yeah, but I'm not gonna do that because I don't know the exact number of days. But I'm gonna say, on July 14th, what a great day. It's Bastille Day. If any of you are French, it's Bastille Day. Mm, yeah. It's also, it wasn't great stuff in history, or at least a lot of good positive stuff. But one of the things I thought was interesting in 1931, there was a grasshopper. Yes, I say grasshopper plague in South Dakota. And the governor asked for assistance. Honest to goodness, I hadn't heard of this before. I don't remember an actual plague. There were feet and feet of grasshoppers. They described it that you could shovel the grasshoppers with a scoop. They were eating all of the grain, all of everything. One person described it as like you were part of a living being, because they're all kind of get around you and grab onto your clothes, and it was like you're wearing clothing of grasshoppers. It was wild. And I didn't know we actually had something like that in the 30s. In the 30s of the last century. We're not in our 30s of this century yet. Also in 1914, it was a patent for the very first liquid fueled rocket. When I looked at the date, I said, I doubled 1914. Yes, 1914. We actually had rockets back then, liquid fueled rockets. I remember seeing a documentary on somewhere in England, where they were testing him and they were launching him across to a deserted island. And they were at first 50 feet, 100 feet, several hundred feet, whatever, back in the back in the early 1900s. It's amazing when we look at how great minds, great thinkers had things, we had things done back then that far away. It brings me to the thing I talk about often is electric cars. We think of a Tesla, we think of all the electric cars out now. Then we think, well, how far back? And you can say, well, I remember when the Prius came out. Well, no. How about a little further back in the 1900s again, the early 1900s? They had electric cars. They got rid of them. They dismissed them, maybe because the batteries couldn't last so long and they didn't have much battery technology back then, but we had them a long time ago. It's amazing. It's amazing when you think how ingenuitive man has been. All right, let's talk about a subject today. Subject today is you become what you think of. Oh, I put the wrong thing in the back in the back of me. I am going to just, if you give me a moment, I'm just going to update this. Yes, I will update this. Sometimes we don't do things the way we want them done. The way we want them done. Magic! Yes, I'm gonna hide on stream so you can see what's for today. And I've talked about that before. Um, but then I thought, hey, not just positive thinking, any thinking. Any thinking. And there's a lot of studies that have been done, there's a lot of books that have been written, and there's a lot of quotes, which I have several of them today, of course. But what I teach my clients is you want to be thinking of positive things more than negative things. And the first thing is let's become more aware of what we're thinking at any moment. More aware, when you have stuff coming out of your mouth and it's critical and it's, not so positive about other people, about the situation, about things, anything that's coming out and it's not positive. That means what's in your mind is not positive at the time. When we worry, when we catastrophize, we're thinking of negative things. We're thinking of worst case, right? When we stressed, we're again thinking of negative things. Usually, again, worst case, what's going to happen because of this? Or are we stressed? Can I do this? I can't do this. If we were stressed, we wouldn't say, I can do this. We might question, can I do this? Thinking we can't. And so there's a lot of negative things. So the first thing is to become aware. Hey, is my head in a negative space? Is my head in a negative space or is it in a positive space? I like to say, okay, because you do become what you think of, or you do get what you think of, because that happens too. I like to say, think of more positive things than negative things. You don't have to think of positive things all day long. You can only have to think of only positive things. People say, "Hey, you don't want the rose-colored glasses, and where you're not seeing anything that's danger, anything that's not what you want." No, that's not what positive thinking is. Thinking is making the best out of where you are in the moment, right? And actually having that positivity towards where you're going to go. Thinking about the good things that can happen as opposed to the bad things that can happen. We are in this world today, we are always thinking about the bad things that can happen. We're always looking for the bad things. You get on social media and you'll find so many things that are drawing out the bad things that they see, that the people see. And they basically, in my world, we call it filter or generalize. They basically generalize saying it's all like this. or they basically filter out any of the any of the good. Hey, Luke Casey, good morning, my friend. It's wonderful to see you here. I was just reading something yesterday. It was talking about the Constitution does not have the word God in it. And they were talking about in God we trust. It was put on currency in the 50s, and then it was made legal to have that on all currencies in certain places in the 50s. So they were drawing away the fact that this country is based on God, and they were saying, "Hey, here's proof." And I said, "Wow, that's pretty cool." I wanted to understand that Constitution didn't say anything about it. Well, the Constitution basically is written on how we're going to govern the land. How we're going to govern the land. And they said our founding fathers didn't have anything about God in there. And so, yeah, absolutely true. The Constitution didn't, but we weren't going to bring God into our governance, into our legal system. It makes sense. However, the Declaration of Independence is a whole different by our founding fathers. It's a whole different story. God, the divine, the creator, and said in all different ways several times, basically saying, hey, we are becoming independent of the sovereignty of England because we want this freedom, because we are children of God, whatever what the wording was. And so this person who had posted it had just the negativity saying, okay, they were saying trying to say, hey, God really isn't a part of our founding country, forefathers, the way they founded the country. But that was evidence that I just found that it was. They didn't see it because they were convinced they were looking to push something out instead of take something in. And of course, I saw it because I was looking to say, hey, it's got to be there. And I found it. So when you're in a positive state, you find the positive things. When you're in a negative state, you find the negative things. What would you rather? Hey, good morning, Brenda Martin, my sweetheart. What would you rather? The negative things or the positive things? I don't know about you. I'd rather find the positive things because among those positive things are opportunities I wouldn't find otherwise. Among those positive things are things that are going to make me feel good. Among those negative things are things that are going to make me feel bad. I'd much rather. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm blinded to any problems. It doesn't mean that I'm blinded to anything negative in my life. It means that I'm really thinking more about the positive. However, when those negative things come in, if I've got more of a positive outlook, I'm going to look at those negative things in a more positive way and find solutions to them easier. Find solutions. When you're negative, when you got negative emotions, I'll say this. I know people object to this, but emotions that don't make us feel good, emotions that aren't resourceful for us. How's that? Anger, fear, sadness. When we have those in our mind, in our heart, in our body, it's harder to rationalize. It's harder to be practical about things. And when they're gone, it's easier. Now, you're going to say, what about if you have the positive emotions? What if you have joy? What about if you have happiness? Well, I've never had a problem solving problems when I was happy. Matter of fact, I was happy solving problems. So, yeah, I'd much rather be on that positive side. And that's what I want for you today. We'll take one more. And I don't know, I'd rather have my life shaped from positive thoughts than negative thoughts. I don't know about you, but that's just where I'm coming from. Let's see what our quotes are going to tell us today. This, of course, is the most famous. It's from Proverbs in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew text. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And I think I know the quote that has a different a different how do I want to translation? It says, "As a man thinketh." You might have heard that too. A man thinketh, so is he. So yeah, how you're thinking most of the time is you. It becomes you. So I'd rather become the person who thinks very positive, has a positive outlook than a critical outlook. Because let me ask you this. Do you like people who are criticizing all the time? Do you like to be with them? Do you like people who are extremely critical on all sorts of things? Because they're not fun to be with. I want to be the person who's fun to be with. The mind is everything. What you think you become. This particular thing is often attributed to Buddha. I can't tell you that for sure, but a lot of people attribute that. And I think it's fascinating that Buddha was talking about the mind. He thinks it's powerful. And philosophers throughout mankind have talked about that. But he says, okay, what you think, you become. Henry Ford's famous one, of course, is whether you think you can or you think you can't. You're right. No, I talked about thinking you attract or thinking you create. Now he's talking about, okay, the way you're thinking, if you think you can, which is a positive thing, you can. If you think you can't, you can. He says you're right, whether it's one or the other. And I'll tell you, all right, it's not an absolute. That's why people kick this down. It's not an absolute, right? If I think I can't do something, sometimes I surprise myself by doing it. And if I think I can do something, sometimes I surprise myself by being unable to do it. But I will tell you, and for this quote, if you think you can, incredibly increase the odds that you can. And if you think you can't, you incredibly increase the odds that you can't, that you won't be able to. That's how it works. Nothing's an absolute. And people put these down because they just come up with examples where it doesn't work. The greatest discovery of mind generation is that a human being can alter his life by altering his attitudes of mind. William James was a psychologist at the turn of the century from the 1800s to the 1900s. He wrote a lot about psychology, and he actually had a quote that's similar to the one for Proverbs, but this is the one I chose here. The greatest discovery of my generation. Okay, so this is back 120 some odd years ago. Is that a human being can alter his life just by altering the attitudes of his mind. How do you alter the attitudes of your mind? It's altering what you're thinking of. Absolutely. And boy, he's saying you can alter your entire life. That's phenomenal to think of. What you think, you become. What you feel, you attract. What you imagine, you create. This is often attributed to Buddha. Again, the writings when I picked this up said, but it's hard to find evidence. But I love this because it's a little similar to that diagram I had. What you think, you become. What you feel, you attract. And what you imagine, you create. This is all about how you're living your life and starting with how you're thinking. Again, I'd much rather become the person that's a positive person that loves to help others and loves to uplift people. And that doesn't come from thinking negative. That doesn't come from a person who's worrying and catastrophizing all the time. That comes from a person who has a positive outlook. That comes from a person who, when they fail, they learn from it as opposed to letting it destroy them and then uh, helping others, helping to destroy others around them as they talk about it for the rest of their lives. That's what happens. Here's our last one of the day. Change your thoughts and change your world. Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote the groundbreaking book Positive Thinking back in the 70s, um, he's the one behind a whole movement of positive thinking. Change your thoughts and change your world. Now, he's right. Now, how do you want to change your world, though? Do you want to change it in a positive way? If you wanted to change it in a negative way, I'm sorry for you. How do you want to change your world? Obviously, it's in a positive way. You want to make it better. And if you want to make it better, that comes from more positive thinking. Again, I'm going to end this by stating again, because you're probably saying, well, it sounds simple, but it's not, Kevin. How do I think positively all the time? It starts with awareness. It starts with awareness. If you're worrying, what are you worrying about? And is it real? And then think about, okay, what if I think about the opposite of what I'm worried about? If I'm worrying that I'm going to break down, right? I'm, I'm not really, I am fearful of driving, or I'm fearful of whatever it is. Think about what the opposite of that is. Think about the opposite. Usually it's a very positive thing. And start to think about that more than thinking about the other thing. So becoming aware of what your thoughts are. When your thoughts go to the negative, say, okay, let's stop that. Let's think of something more positive. What's the opposite of what I've been thinking about? Is it realistic for me to think about that? And if it is, yeah, think about it. It's wonderful. So I leave you. Today is a good day to have a good day, or it's a good day for a good day, right? This is a positive thought. Everything I talk about is usually very positive. Bring positivity into your life more so than you have before. Just increase it so that you're thinking about those positive things more so. You know, we have vision boards. People talk about vision boards, and and people poo-poo vision boards. I personally don't use it because I do my things in different ways and more so up here. But they're wonderful things. If you start picturing the things that you'd like, I'm not talking about for goal setting though. People don't use them because they say, "Oh, I can't get my goals, and it feels so bad when I don't get my goals." Don't worry about it. Picture a vision board of things that you like, things that make you happy when you see them. Put all sorts of pictures up there, and then go to that board several times a day. So it increases your positivity in your mind, which increases your energy level in a very positive way, which will start to attract great things to you. It'll do that. All right, my friends. All right. This has been great chat. It's a great subject. I want to talk more in this in different ways, but this has been a great subject. Mm. And great coffee, by the way. Again, I hope you had a cup of coffee, tea, or whatever it is you're drinking with me today. And I want to wish you a phenomenal, fantastic, incredible, marvelous day and week. I want to wish that for you, but I want to wish that you realize that you have the power to control that. And one of the things that you have to control is controlling the way you think. We can control our thoughts. We can shut down thoughts anytime we want. We can think of things any way we want. So you have the power to start thinking in a way that's going to allow you to have that great week. All right, take care, all. Bye bye.